Cool. Well, let's get into it, man. So Kyle Douglas, driver of Luxifer, he has Luxifer. The Hilux, and it's in the U.S., and it's kind of done a tour of burnouts thus far already. You were at SEMA. Now you made it across the entire country to Cletus and Cars, which starts, if you guys are watching this, it starts tomorrow. So you guys should watch live because there's going to be some cool burnouts there. This car came fully from Australia on a plane, right? Not on a boat.
On a 747, yeah.
Whew, that doesn't sound cheap or easy to orchestrate.
Cheap, definitely not, and easy to orchestrate, no. When we first spoke about the deal about putting it on the plane, the guy that I was speaking to that was helping me do all this, he goes, ring this guy. He's going to sort everything out. You just get your car ready and it'll go. I was like, oh, yeah, cool. So I rang the guy, and the guy's like, yeah, here's the number. Ring this person. So I ring this person. It turned out to be someone in America that actually does like customs imports and stuff like that. And I quickly figured out, I go, I'm actually sorting all this out. So for someone that's never done anything like that before, at the start it was a really big headache trying to organise clearances and import all this stuff that I knew nothing about. And it sort of went from 0 to 100 really quick. The money part, paying for the flight, was the easy part. You just send them the money. But all the run around before getting the car on the plane, man, it's a full-time job.
Oh, I'm sure, because they're super particular about what leaves the country and comes back into the country and how long it's gone for, if you're going to make money off of it there. I'm sure they're by the book on all of that stuff.
It's like the questions they ask were pretty full on. They're like, why are you taking your four-wheel drive to America? Oh, I'm going to go to SEMA. Okay, well, what are you doing at SEMA? Burnouts. And the funny thing is I actually applied for so you're applied with the environmental organisation, I suppose, and it's called a race car exemption. Mm-hmm. So these guys are like full into their emissions and all this stuff, and here's me sitting there telling them I'm doing burnouts. And we know a bit more in Australia, it doesn't pollute as bad as what people think. But obviously explaining to these people, hey, I'm going to do burnouts and these are the Environmental Protection Agency or something like that. And it was a bit of an awkward conversation. So that was,
They're like, but what about the salmon?
Yeah.
The salmon, man. So you had to convince them that you were sending a car over just to pop some tires and kind of try to explain that to them like it's reasonable.
Yeah, so in the end, I took a bit of a U-turn when I was talking to them. I ended up telling him it was like an event car, and we did drag racing. Because drag racing in my head and probably in their head is less environmental, like a less of an impact on the environment, you would think. So obviously I took a bit of a U-turn and they just sort of, and in the end they're like, oh, okay, whatever, it's your money, who cares? And they agreed. So
who are you explaining that to, the US or to Australia?
To the US.
Okay. Yeah. So because Australia probably doesn't care that much once it's out of the country.
At all.
They're more worried about once it's coming back in.
Yeah. So that'll be another headache for another day. Australia didn't care. They just...
They said, see you later.
Yeah, he said, they don't let the door hit you on the way out.
One last car for us to deal with.
One last hoon on the streets. No, Australia were cool with it. It was the US. And to be fair, I thought it was going to be worse than even though it wasn't easy, I thought it was going to be way worse. And they were pretty good with it in the end, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Huh. So it's a Hilux. What is the car exactly? What's the engine combo in it? What's the deal on this thing? So
the car's a Toyota Hilux, come out with a factory, I think it was a 3-litre diesel. Obviously not the fastest car in the world. It was actually a 1997 or 98 model VIND, but with that model of Hilux, you can cut the front of the car off and put a newer front end on it. So basically I cut the front of the car off and put a 2004-5 front end on it, which makes it the new model. So that's why it looks a bit different to a 98. Then we jammed a 427 cubic inch LS motor in it, built by Wolfspeed in Sydney, Australia. We put a 1471 blower on it, methanol, big fuel pumps. And the interesting part about this burnout car is it's actually fuel injected. So Australia's very old school with their burnout cars. If you're one of the best guys around, you use mechanical injection. And I was very against mechanical injection because I look at things and go, how much do you know this much about mechanical injection. How much are you spending? This much. You see the line and you're like, you know what? I'm going to hurt engines very quickly because I don't know what I'm doing. And I got into the sport in 2019 pretty much. And you need time to learn and people to learn off. And no one really wanted to tell you much.
So they're kind of, the NIT community kind of keeps it a little to themselves on the mechanical injection stuff.
Yes and no.
It's like top fuel technology in the U.S. Like we don't. The only guys that run mechanical injection in the U.S. are probably making 10,000 horsepower.
Yeah, it's dinosaur technology. But there's a method to it. It's not that people will keep it too close to their chest. You just get a lot of experts, and it's not their fault. They believe in what they're telling you. They might go run this, do this, change this, and unfortunately with mechanical, there's very little room for error. So you make a wrong pill choice, you'll hydrolock your engine and blow up a $50,000 engine in one go.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to stuff with that. I didn't want to take that risk, basically.
I mean, I've seen it. Non-mechanical injection cars do that same exact thing, especially on methanol, because you need so much that if you just overcalculate on your startup, you're gonna flood the cylinders, and especially because if you're putting it on the top of the blower, which I don't have to explain any of this to you, I'm more just talking to out loud. If you put it on the top of the blower, your timing to when you're actually burning it is pretty different.
Yeah.
So you have to almost like really think about it. It's not just like spraying it right into the cylinders. You're trying to cool the blower.
Yep.
And you could probably explain on that
so,
more. Here, I'm going to grab some water. Just 1 second.
Yeah, I was like, I'm getting a bit dry.
I know. I didn't even think about it at first. It comes a little needed.
Sponsored by these water guys.
Yeah,
great value.
Exactly. Walmart water.
Yeah.
So now you have to figure out who's tuning your car. What is it on? Haltech, I would imagine?
It's on Link ECU.
Okay, New Zealand.
Yep. So a big thing for me when I got into the sport, I sort of did a bit of research and I decided a few things because I didn't just get into car. I didn't get into burnouts because I wanted to get into burnouts. I got into cars from scratch. Don't get me wrong, I had a car that I used to do little burnouts on the street and drift around corners in the rain. It was nothing serious. I was a P-plater. You know, it was nothing like...
P-plate is for...
It's like a learner.
What the U.S. We don't have that.
Okay.
We don't have like a P-plate learner plate deal.
Yeah, okay.
We don't have levels of plate.
Yeah.
You can just... Once you have your license,
professional.
Yeah.
So when I was younger, you get your learner plates for a year, which means you drive with your mum or dad or friend or whatever with an open license. You then get a provisional license for 3 years. So that's sort of like a restricted. You can't drive after a certain time. You can't drive V8s because, you know, Australians will probably do something dumb.
V8s?
You had to have a 6 power to weight ratio was like what decided what car you could drive.
There's actually a power to weight ratio like math that the DMV does or whatever you call it.
You give them the VIN and they go yes or no.
Wow, that's
so
pretty funny.
It's pretty common information what you can and can't drive. But normally V8s are absolutely not. Don't even look at it.
Man, I mean, most V8s make like no power. Once you go back to like, 80s V8s, those things make.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
You'd be better off in a 6-cylinder.
Don't get me wrong, there's little loopholes. You could get like an exemption saying this is the only car I got. My dad bought it for me. And you could get an exemption, but it was quite hard.
Yeah.
So obviously getting straight into cars, I thought, geez, you know, I haven't got the experience. And when they're talking about engines, I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, my idea of a tool was a shifter, which you guys call a crescent wrench.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was like...
shifter.
A shifter is what we call it in Australia. It's like a shift the size, right?
That's funny.
So I thought I had to be smart about it because I wanted to get in and I wanted to do it and I was keen and I was quite good at when I started. Like, you know, I got sort of understood how it works, but I didn't have the sort of experience to help my car get through the event. There's no race teams. It's like you go to the track, you do it yourself.
Yeah. You break enough things until you finally learn.
Yep.
You kind of just have to trial by fire in a lot of ways.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I thought straight away, you know what, I'm going to go EFI, and if it stuffs up, it's the tuner's fault. I ring the tuner and go, man, you've done something wrong. This car's not running right? So I went EFI, and I remember when I first built this car, I rang Warspeed, Troy, which is now we're really good buddies. And I rang him up and I said, I want to build this engine. I want a big, tough engine like all the big guys you see. You know, you see all the real Summer Nats and Power Crews and all these cool guys that got these big blowers. I said, I want one of those engines. How much is it? And I nearly fell over when he told me the price. I said, all right.
Is that like intake to oil pan price, or is this like
The original one was a bowl kit. Because I'll probably start at the story getting into burnouts. In 2018, I went to an event called Burnout All Stars. Burnout All Stars, I didn't know this at the time, but it was the best of it was basically some nuts, but a show. So they had grandstands, they had light towers, they had music, they had cheerleaders, they had everything going on. And I went to this show. My mate dragged me along. I didn't even really want to go. And they said, and I watched it. I was like, oh, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. I thought it was normal. So I went home, and then literally the next day I was drinking in the shed with my mates, working on whatever I was working on. And I got on eBay. I said, I wonder how much a crate engine is. And I went on eBay, and I had about 6 Jack Daniels at that time. And I ended up buying a LSA crate engine on my credit card, that day. And it turned up probably a week later. I was like, all right, what am I going to do now? I got this engine, and I thought it was a good engine. I thought it was going to do awesome burnouts and make all sorts of weird noises. Turns out it didn't. It was okay, but it was never going to be a pro car. So that's when the wheels started getting rolling, and we basically evolved Luxifer from there.
You guys got a bunch of LSA engines down there because they were takeouts from a car, right? Didn't they have a bunch that they just had to sell in Australia, just like excess? Some kind of overstock deal happened.
I reckon so, because I bought an LSA, and I'm going to convert this to your money now. I paid 12,000 Australian for an LSA motor, brand new in a crate, never used, obviously blue packet job. So that's probably about $7,000 your money for a brand new LSA.
In 2018, did you say?
2018.
Yeah, wow, that's a really good price.
Yeah, so cheap as.
Yeah. I remember hearing something way back of the I don't know if it was the Commodore, whichever one was like the newest vehicle that was supposed to have the LSAs. They ended up switching to LS9s right before they made them.
Yeah.
So they ended up with this like excess of LSAs in Australia.
Yeah.
And people were trying to get them to the US because they're good, valuable motors. I mean, those blowers right now are almost worth $7,000. Yeah. Like a complete LSA blower, but that's... People that know me know I can go on about LSA stuff because I like that blower. It's a good...
To this day, if I was going to get into burnouts, I would buy an LSA, rip the blower off, sell it, slap yourself a 671 on the top, and you will make a reliable 800 to 900 horsepower every day of the week.
Yeah.
Reliable, won't let you down, as long as you set it up right. And that's the thing about LSA is they're built to build whole boost and 4 boosts. Awesome combination.
Yeah, they just make a lot of heat when you're going to be wide open throttle for, I don't know how long your average burnout.
About a minute 10.
Yeah, about a minute 10. Even in like some of the bigger, like some of the smaller contests, do they still a minute 10?
Less power you have and the less efficient your car is, the longer you go. So for some competitions in Australia, you got to go over a minute. I'm not sure what the rules are here, but if you go under a minute, DQ'd.
Under a minute is DQ.
Yeah,
too quick.
They've started taking that rule away because the cars are getting crazy. The wheel speed's getting crazy. And as drivers, we'd sit there and go, do you guys want us to go out there and give you the best show we can? Or do you want us to hold off and rev it to 7,000 RPM instead of 9?
Yeah.
And they've started going, oh, and you sort of penalise yourself. Because if you don't have enough time to use the whole pad, you're penalising yourself in that regard, as opposed to getting DQ'd for popping tyres in 59 seconds, which has happened to me before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I always feel as long as you can make it interesting, like I like that. I don't like when people slow walk around the pit. That gets me frustrated when like they have no front wheel speed at all and they're just like creeping around. Yeah. They have a lot of rear wheel, but they're just kind of walking it around. That always frustrates me a little bit because it looks cool, it sounds cool, but it's like it doesn't show much skill. Anybody can hold the brakes really hard.
This is an extremely hot topic in Australia.
Is it?
This is going down the rabbit hole massively in Australia.
Oh, so instantly I found what other people get frustrated at too.
I got opinions, and as a driver, so there's a difference between crab walking and slow and fast. So in my opinion, it needs to be somewhere in the middle because, and don't get me wrong, it is easier to do a skid at running pace or jogging pace as opposed to letting off the brake and letting Jesus take the wheel.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's way easier to do it slower, but it demonstrates a lot of skill when it comes to turning the car and using the pad when you go slower. When you're just, letting off the brake and doing 360s and seeing where you end up, it looks fantastic, but the skill level sort of gets taken away. And when you look at the criteria of judging a burnout, the smoke scores will be less, sort of less favorable for you, because when you're moving quicker in a car, you're losing smoke because it's not as constant. So it's a really deep rabbit hole, and people that don't know burnouts, they look at the scores and they go, it's really hard to understand. But I feel like half the sort of thing with burnouts is if you can understand how they score you, you can better yourself quite quickly.
For sure. And that was part of it, is you need to know exactly how they're scoring. And they all, from what I've seen at Summernats, they keep that pretty tight to their chest, how they score exactly.
Oh.
And I don't hate that. I get, they keep the criteria pretty close, so you don't kind of set up the perfect run just to be the perfect score. You almost kind of have to guess what they're about to judge on, which makes it a little difficult. But then if you do know, you're kind of just have this inside information.
See, this is the thing, right? Summernats is probably one of the only events in the world where they very approachable. So I remember my first Summernats event. I went to Summernats, never knew nothing about it. I didn't consider myself even a burnout guy. I was a power cruise guy.
Yeah.
Which is a totally different car vibe. Anyway, so I went up and they said, if anyone has any questions, come ask us. And I just walked up to the head judge. I said, hey man, after my burnout, I said, what can I do better? And I was just polite. And I asked him what I could do better. And he told me exactly, to the T, exactly what they're looking for.
Okay.
Which is awesome. They make out everyone makes out it's all the big secret. It's actually not. And if you're just a good person and you use your manners and you approach people at the right time, especially the Summernats guys, they will tell you exactly what you need to do. But the problem is that's how you interpret that information and then go and do it. That's where the hard part is.
What happened to me was I asked to see his iPad of how he was judging.
Yeah, nah.
But we were talking before that, and I was like, oh, can I see what the criteria is? And he goes, no. I was like, okay, that makes sense. But in my mind, I was like, well, I was working with Garrett and stuff, and I was trying to replicate the judging style in the U.S., which would have never worked at the time. Way too early on for thinking like that. But that was my thought. I was like, maybe I can translate some of this into us, but I get it. They keep that. Yeah. They keep their exact criteria a little tight to them, and I don't blame them for that.
I think once they start scoring people, they won't show you because it's information. It's they take it serious. Australians
they
take
should.
Burnouts.
There's big money on the line. They gotta take it serious.
Yeah, sort of.
There's money on the line.
There's money on the line. I wouldn't say big.
Yeah.
Not compared to what we spend on the cars, but
we're talking the same in drag racing. We spend $200,000 on a car, and you're happy to win $2,500.
Yeah, and you go out there and trash your stuff to impress people you don't know. I get the whole. But hey, I do it for the thrill for myself, but.
That's what you have to tell yourself at night.
Yeah, to get to sleep. Yeah,
there's no other way.
Not another $5,000 on
Yeah, there's no other way to make it work.
But yeah, Summernats are an extremely professional outfit, and they actually very approachable. And there's been massive controversy over the years about certain people not winning certain events, and then they have a whinge online. Which, granted, sometimes I say, that was good, but But if they went a different way about it, it would have been a different outcome. Mm-hmm. So people just choose the wrong way to do things. And unfortunately for them, most of the times you'll cop a ban. But hey, it's their show. And at the end of the day, people go, I've had many people come, if you go to America and you don't catch on fire and you do this and that. I said, end of the day, this is their show. I'm going to their show.
Yeah.
If they don't want to see constant RPM and using corners and that, if they want to see fire, limiter bashing, I'm not putting my car on a wall. I've said that as soon as I got to America. If that's what they want to see, it's their show. They don't score me well because I know what you want and I'm not doing it. Mm-hmm. But that's at the end of the day, we go to their show. If that's what they want to see, that's what you need to do.
I think that has changed a lot. Like fire, I don't think is going to get you anywhere. Hitting a wall shouldn't get you anywhere.
Absolutely not.
Especially if you hit the wall with the nose of your car. If the nose of your car hits the wall, like you're done. Like that's it.
Put your shit on the trailer.
Yeah, like especially on the tipping.
Yeah.
That's real bad. But if like, you know, you scrape your bumper on the wall a little bit, but you have like control enough where it doesn't move the wall or move the car, that's pretty impressive to me if you have that spatial awareness. Like Formula Drift is similar. You got to get really close to the wall. You show how spatially aware you are, and it's the same deal though. It's a judge sport. So in a judge sport, there's always going to be contention. Everybody's going to argue. That's where it gets tough.
There's no clear-cut winner.
I don't know how many judges Summernauts uses though.
3 or 4.
Yeah, because I feel like that helps too, is having a lot of judges.
Because Burnouts is a sport, right? You can stand at one end of the pad and see absolutely zero. Once, like you'll see with my car or even Garrett's or Cletus's car, Killer B as well, I'm sure it's a good smoke car.
Yeah.
He does a tip in front of you and you're not seeing anything for 30 seconds at all.
He's not seeing anything in the car.
No, well, you try. So you'll see that the fact that your vantage point might be different to someone else. And this is the controversy goes, people see online, they see from a guy's camera over that side and they can't see anything, but you've seen the guy hit walls, you know, not go close to the corner, change his RPM, change his line, you know, steering around, going nowhere. That stuff matters. So at the end of the day, having 4 judges and having them around the pad, they can all see bits and pieces and they talk. After a skid, they talk to each other and say, did he hit that wall? Did he not hit that wall? I've lost comps by hitting a wall, you know, less than like a Talio paper, like a roll. Like, I don't know if you have Talios here, but I'm talking just nicked a wall and it cost me a whole competition. So it's very strict, and
that's tough when you just nick a wall like that. Like, that's a debatable one for me, because I feel like if you don't move the barricade, you're doing pretty decent.
But where do you draw the line? It's what's a big hit, what's a small hit. If you blanket a rule and say you even nick it, touch it, move it, drive it,
that makes it easy.
You got to draw the line somewhere.
That makes it an easy line. There's no paint on the wall. You're safe.
So they came to the pit. This was in Australia, one of the big comps, and Summernauts comps there. And I was the only one to use this. They had this chute, right? And there was one of the baddest burnout cars in the world there, Peter Gramusa. 700 cube, big block. Like, the thing is an animal, absolute animal.
What kind of car is it?
XR Falcon. He's actually sold it. He retired. The last comp I won, he was there and he hurt his motor. And he told me he was going to retire. And but anyway, I'll get to that. But he so basically this thing is an absolute beast. If he goes out and has a clean run, put your shit on the trailer. It is proper badass. Anyway, so he did his burnout. I was like, all right, if I want to win this, I've got to push the boundaries. See, my car is about a 9 out of 10. His car's a 10 out of 10. So if you're doing the same thing he's doing, say 8 out of 10 out of 10, whatever. If I'm doing the same thing he's doing, absolutely cannot compete with him.
Yeah, because if you guys did the same run, his car will win.
The only way I can beat him is driver skill, which is a massive part of the pointing. So I saw the pad and I said, all right, I've got to take some serious risks here. If I don't take a risk, I'm getting second or third. Is what it is, can't help it. So I went out and I drove the wheels off this car and I used every inch. I went up places where you come into the pad. I went back up there and turned around and come out. And it was really slippery and really, really sucked together. So when the car was sideways, there was not much room on each side of the car. Like, they didn't want you to go up there, but I had to go up there to win. Went up there, just tagged the wall. I felt it. And they probably knew when I wasn't really celebrating as much as what I should have. And they weren't sure. They walked on the pad to pick up a bit of tyre, turned around, there's a tiny bit of green paint on the wall. They then ran to my pit bay, which was probably 300 metres away, and he comes over, he goes, did you hit the wall or didn't you hit the wall? One of the judges. And I'm pretty honest, man. I can't lie. I said, yeah, I hit the wall. He goes, oh, thanks for being honest, but it just cost you, basically.
Yeah, you knew you were going to lose, but if it was the right thing to do to tell him that it actually hit touched.
And unfortunately, I can't lie like that, so... And everyone's like, oh, you shouldn't have told them. You
get banned, too, for things like that, right? If they knew you were doing it on purpose, maybe.
You wouldn't get the right, you don't want to be known as someone that cheats. So I told them and they said, hey, man, you didn't hit that wall. You're looking real good, So, but it is what it is. So, but it's hard to, when they got 4 judges, getting back to the 4 judges, obviously 4 points of view, you can see 4 different angles and you don't miss things that one judge obviously would miss.
Yeah, it's interesting to do judge sports are always tough for me. I've always had so much doubt about them. I like watching Formula Draft. I like watching burnouts. I've always struggled with judge sports, but a good burnout, everybody knows, like in the US, you pretty much know who won if you watch them all.
Yeah.
Like there's a standout almost all the time.
Yeah.
And I think that's pretty obvious to most people. But then some people are like, well, like don't realize the nuances of like, yeah, but his engine blew up and he had to get pushed off the pad. So like
right.
just little things like that like people that just watch the burnout may not realize like that doesn't get a win.
Yeah.
Like if you leave your crank on the
or you're reversed. Little things like and that's like Australia still struggles. The general public that go to summer nats or power crews, you see online after they might have 50 comments saying, why didn't X person win? Because they did an awesome burnout and there was flames and dragons and lasers and all sorts of stuff going on. And at the end of the day, they don't understand the judging. And I feel like they're getting better because people are starting to explain what's what. But America, you guys got to go through that from scratch. You got to go through, hey, what do you mean he didn't win? He did, awesome smoke and this, and he caught on fire and then he used a K-frame against the wall. And so, yeah, it's just a progression of the sport. You definitely catch quick.
Yeah, it's going to be a long process for us. I think we got another 2-3 years before it really comparable to Australian style. But the other problem is in the U.S. we have other huge forms of motorsports.
Yes.
Drag racing's massive.
Huge.
Drifting is massive.
Huge, yeah.
It's tough to, have 3 really big forms of motorsport. I mean, we have road course too, but it's kind of meh.
Yeah.
It's more for like the Porsche guys.
And this is the cool thing about being Australian is Americans are good at most things they do. Sheer numbers, availability for parts, and obviously technology and everything. America's great, right? You're always Australia's big brother.
Yeah.
Come to burnouts, it's like, hell, we're the guys.
Yeah. 100%.
It's and it's a cool feeling of knowing we're as a nation, a small nation, we're quite good at something motorsport related. It doesn't happen often. So that's sort of a chip the Australians can be proud of. We do burnouts well, and you guys, there's nothing saying you guys can't do it just as well. It's just we're sort of just a little bit ahead of the game right now, which half the reason I'm here for 2 years, so I will try my best to evolve the sport in this country just as much as anyone else. I want to be here. I want to do the biggest competitions. I want to do what I can for my sport in this country, and I think that hopefully I can help.
Yeah, I'm excited for that too. And like we were talking on the drive over, there's such a variation of burnouts right now. Like you were at Hoonigan's and nobody's calling that a burnout contest.
No.
Or I mean, you guys hardly even call them burnouts really, right? Isn't that like more of an American thing that we call them burnouts?
No, we do call them burnouts. We refer to it as skids, burnouts. Pretty much that's the main two.
Yeah. I know skids was always like the thing, and us calling them burnouts was like showing we were very American.
Yeah. See, I think I like the term burnouts better than skids. I'm not sure what it's like in this country, but obviously you have to try and it's very redneck for you, bogan for us. If you're like, burnouts, like it's nearly frowned upon.
To say burnout?
To say any kind of term of doing what we do.
Okay.
I don't know how it's
the whole thing,
here.
Yeah,
they're just like, in Australia, like, oh, nice car, whatever, if I'm at service station, petrol station, sorry. Yeah. I'm using Australian words here.
No, I can kind of keep up. I can try.
And they go, what do you do with this thing? And I was like, skids, mate. And they're like, quick, lock the doors, get away. He's going to take our money. Yeah, that's sort of the vibe
it's you get, It's a degenerate.
Right? Yeah, so it's sort of, we're trying to change the view of it as well as, it's a real sport, right? So.
Yeah, you have to change the perception. And like, I mean, when, burnout contests show up to a city, it changes the city for that entire week. Like they're massive events down there. It's not just like some guys when, everybody goes to bed at night, you do your skids. Skids always to me sounded like somebody was crashing.
Yeah.
That sounds like somebody locked up the brakes and crashed into a tree. That's why I've never really said that.
Yeah.
But burnout sounds like you meant to do it.
Yeah, definitely. And it's sort of, I call it burnouts more. It feels like it sounds a little bit better than skids. As I said, skids sounds to like what teenagers do at night in an industrial state.
Yeah.
So it's, yeah, definitely.
One thing that I found interesting too was, we showed up at Sydney Dragway and they had a test and tune for drag racing, but then they had the Burnout pit was open to go do a Burnout there. And I got lucky enough to ride in it was like a blue flatbed Ute, pretty powerful car, pretty well-known car at the time, pretty badass, like all chrome blower deal. It was
Blue's Q.
Yeah, you probably know the car. Yeah, it's a
Jack's
very
name,
nice
yeah.
car.
Yeah, I know him. Yeah.
I think it broke that night that we were
breaks
riding
a
in
lot.
it.
Sorry, Jack, if you're watching.
It did break that night that I was in it, but I found that it was really cool because you could actually practice where we don't have really practice. We just have events.
Yeah.
And big events. There's no there's not really any like little tiny events where you can prove your car.
Yeah.
You have to just go out to the big stage, and that's where it's always going to be tough.
Exactly. So and that's the thing about when you're involving the sport. See, in where I live in Brisbane, near the Gold Coast, we had when I first started Burnouts, it's not underground, but it's like grassroots.
Yeah.
So we used to go to a Burnout event. It was called Mad As Burnouts, and it was these like redneck / bogan. I don't know. Is redneck offensive here?
No.
No, it's just like a type of person.
Redneck's not offensive. If you comment like white trash on something, it actually does get taken down.
Okay, yeah. So
redneck's fine.
Redneck's fine. Sorry,
yeah, people own that. It's like when you're bogan, like people can say it as a, like you can say it offensively to somebody, or people just own it.
Yeah.
Like that's what I am.
So there's a certain type of person we'd call a bogan at home. It's like sort of like my haircut, but normally like just owns an old Commodore and like drives a forklift and drinks beers at lunchtime, like that kind of vibe. So this event was full of those kind of people, but it wasn't a high class event, and it was just like basically go out there, burn your stuff down, have a good time. But what that allows you to do is allows you to, without stress and the big show, learn to drive your car. That's the biggest thing. The grassroots events in Australia when I started were extremely good. You could go and do this a couple of times a month if you wanted to, which evolves into, once you learn how to drive, you can go to these big events and slay. But if you don't have that grassroots area, you're having to find street skids or, other areas to do it. It just doesn't, it's not effective.
Yeah, you can't really do the same thing, especially when you have a car that makes 1,300 horsepower. You can't just drive it to a burnout spot.
At all.
Do your burnout and then drive it home. It's not like, it doesn't really work like that. I mean, it's similar to drag racing in a lot of ways on that same aspect where you need a safe place to do it.
Yep.
And when you're doing it at a safe place, the county or government officials can't really look down on you because you're just doing your hobby in a good, respectful way.
Yeah, and it's good to have mentors too. So I know when I was starting, a lot of guys would come up and go, oh, you did this really well, but you need to do this, and this. And in your head, you're like, oh, there's so much going on.
Yeah.
And it's funny. So Weston, I was at Weston's house last week.
Yeah, Weston Champlin.
Shout out to the homie, Redneck Science.
Good freaking dude.
So
big burnout guy.
Big burnout, and he's so passionate about burnouts. It actually excited me seeing the excitement in his eyes when I was talking about burnouts. He like lit up. And I was like, you know what? I want to help this guy. And I said, man, I'm going to come to your house and we're going to do some burnouts. And I sort of fixed a few things on his car. He didn't know, right? He's like, it's a different breed. Things that work in drag racing don't work in burnouts. So I went to his house and I showed him, we spent like, you'll see the video when it comes out. I don't want to spoil too much, but it was, we did some stuff.
Yeah.
But I showed him little tips and he come away at the end of the day, he goes, I understand now. I know how you can do that. Without people telling you those things, it's very hard to figure it out on your own. So I enjoy doing that.
Yeah, because engines are very different than not to, take anything away from him, but I don't think he's used to high horsepower in general. Like, 1,000 plus horsepower just in any car. Not everybody's been exposed to 1,000 plus horsepower cars a lot.
Yeah, I thought that, and then I walked around his shed, and he's like 1,000 horsepower, 1,100 horsepower.
He's got a bunch,
blah, blah, blah. And I'm thinking, dude, like, Jesus,
He's definitely got quite a few pretty solid hot rods.
Yeah. But none of that relates. So I'm nearly breaking chair there.
No, you're good. Break it.
None of that relates.
Back up.
Yeah, got to back up over there. None of that relates to burnouts. Driving a drag car does not relate to a burnout really at all, apart from when you've done the burnout, keeping your engine alive, you probably learn things that cross over. But the way a car handles in a burnout is totally different to anything else. Mm-hmm. I like to refer to it as burnoutology. So this is another rabbit hole, but it's basically the science behind burnouts.
I like it. I like when people actually think about their craft in a way like this, instead of like somebody that just said, I don't know, I just floor it. I enjoy when somebody actually has like thought into it and they think about the tuning side of it and how the torque converter is happy or the whatever, every little thing about it. So
you actually, and when you get into burnouts, you think you just put your foot down and steer around. And I remember when I first got into the sport, people were saying, you need to study. They said, this person just won the Burnout Masters. They go home and watch everyone else's burnout and they watch what they do and how they do it and what the end result is. Yeah. I was like, I'm not all about that stuff. Me now, if I go home and I don't win, or even if I do win, I'll go home and go, look at someone else's burnout. And in my head, I know exactly what they're doing. 100, it's clear as day, man. It's once you get it, you got it, and you know exactly what they're doing, and you can go, right, he was better than me in this section. And the next comp, I'll go out and do what he did to me and do it better than him, and then I might beat him. It's actually a lot of science behind the whole thing.
Yeah, you got to watch back your game footage. I mean, every athlete does that. You guys have weird sports down there like cricket, but
cricket. Yeah.
We have normal sports.
Yeah, normal. Okay, yeah.
I'm just kidding. We're car guys. We normally don't care about sports like that.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have any desire to.
Not at all.
Yeah, so we can make fun of it all we want then. Yeah. But it's the same. They'll sit there and watch all of their failures more than their successes.
Yep.
I mean, if I got a camera over my shoulder in my car. If I screw something up, I'm watching that thing.
Yep, overshift.
I'm not sleeping at night.
Yeah.
I'm just sitting out there.
And I guess you almost need that kind of passion when it comes to being at a top level of sport. And whether you say that's burnouts or drag racing, if you don't have the passion to do that kind of thing, you're wasting your time.
Yeah. You should just be helping on a car.
Yeah, or find something you are passionate about.
Yeah.
I grew up racing motorcycles, and my brother's a international athlete, like rides motorcycles for a job, and over in Europe. And I never had the passion as a kid. I didn't enjoy it. It was okay. And my friends were like, this is the best ever. Can't wait to race this weekend. I was like, meh. But I hopped in a car, and all of a sudden my world changed. I found what was good for me. That was the fire I wanted out of bikes. It just never happened. Getting in a car, burnouts or high horsepower cars, and all of a sudden I had that passion. And it's quite a nice feeling when you find the thing that in life that really gives you meaning to chase and dream. So
yeah, I mean 100%. And once you start down that hole of like something like this where it's endless, like you can just go out and do it. You don't have to be a professional, like you're talking your brother and the bikes. Like that's hard. You have to really you have to chase burnouts too, but you can just do these burnouts. Like you can just start doing that. Like there's people that suck out there still doing it. So
and
that's the fun thing.
Not everyone wants to be the best in the world at what they do. Some people do it for mental health reasons. Some people do it because they want to for other reasons. I'm quite competitive. Sometimes. Depends on what we're doing. So for me, it was like, all right, I just want to get better and I want to improve myself. And you get to a point where when you're improving and you're getting that feeling of, this is the right reasons to do this. And as I said, Burnout Cars for me was that reason.
100%. I found with just anything car related, I'm here for the social reason as well. I love the community. Like everybody that works on cars, to show up to the track that same day they went through hell. And then you're kind of all in it together in a way. Like nobody showed up there and had it easy. Like we all went through something rough to get here today, and it was a struggle. We're all struggling somehow to pay for it or to make it happen. Flat tires, like they're kind of all paying together, which is makes the community really good.
And they're generally good people. They waste all their money on cars. They don't have money for drugs.
Yeah,
that's what that's how I sort of look at it. It's like when you get growing up and you get your kids get older. Like, sure, get into an expensive motorsport. That way you have no money to waste on drinking or partying too much, right?
Yep.
And now the car community is quite good. They're normally pretty good people. So the people give you the shirt off their back. And I can't tell you the amount of sleepless nights I've had before a race meeting of something small's gone wrong or you got to drive 12 hours, but your car's not ready the day before. It's and life gets in the way, don't get me wrong. But it's as you said, everyone goes through that at some point, and it's taken me 4 weeks and a lot of money to get right here, right now. So the struggle's real, man, let me tell you.
I believe it. I mean, we were talking and you were telling me you're coming all the way from Kansas and Vegas, and I've done that drive, and it's not a fun, easy one.
Was not fun at all.
And I think a lot of people that aren't from the U.S., you know, you're thankfully from a large country, but like Europeans, they never realize how big the U.S. is.
No, at all.
They're like, oh, we'll just go to Vegas and then check out New York and then we'll just drive around a little bit.
Yeah, it's because obviously I've been to Europe a fair bit with watching my brother race. And you go, what do you mean you can drive across the whole country in one day? Like, England's not that big. Like, it is. Yeah. But it's not.
I mean, Florida's bigger, I think.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised.
It's like longer.
Yeah. So they definitely don't get the distance. And it's quite funny to, you know, see the reactions of people when they go, what do you mean it's 4 days to drive halfway across the country?
Yeah.
So,
driving through Texas is like a full day event.
I think you can drive for 13 or 14 hours and still not be out of Texas or something, can you?
Yeah, it doesn't even make any sense. So with Burnout chassis, do you feel that you started with the wrong chassis, or are you pretty happy with it? Because it's not the norm. I've seen a few four-wheel drive vehicles that are not four-wheel drive anymore, but you guys call anything big a four-wheel drive.
Yeah, that's
or
right.
a Jeep.
Yeah, four-wheel drive, yeah.
Yeah.
We don't call them trucks. Trucks for us are semis, but yeah.
Yeah, so when I say four-wheel drive, I just mean taller than a car.
Good question. As I said, I built the car to do a different event. I wanted to build something cool and unique. And the Hilux for me, my dad had one growing up. I had one in the backyard. Made sense to put a LS in a Hilux. Was it the right decision to compete with the best people in the world? Absolutely not. That car is so hard to drive. Because body shifting and body weight, body roll, absolutely stuffs you up every time. I've adapted to drive around it. I drive the car differently to how I would drive. Say if I jumped in a normal car, I could drive it totally different. It wouldn't work the way I drive my car in a normal car. It just probably steers a lot better and stops a lot better and all the rest of it. But the way I drive my Hilux, it works for me, but it wouldn't, I've had to learn that. And I've driven other cars with big blowers and burnout cars. This thing's like driving on rails. Like, it's just great. It's fantastic.
I would imagine it's like low, tight to the ground. Like, doesn't try to like flip when you tip it in real hard.
Yeah. So the biggest thing for me is changing direction. So if I go, I'll tip in, and then most of the time I'll look for a corner. And you have a plan, but it's not concrete because things go wrong. You under-rotate, over-rotate. And if I come out this way, I'll go to that corner or that corner if I'm over-rotate. And it's sort of something you do on the fly, but if I don't wash off my body speed well enough, I will just continue to do this and I can't get out of it unless it's just, and the steering wheel and the brake and the where your wheel's positioned and when you hit the brake to change the body roll all matters. I've tried to explain it to people and they're just like...
So you get like stuck in a spin almost because the body is trying to like throw itself.
Yep.
And then you'd have to fully almost stop the vehicle to get it to like
stop it
settle.
From rolling.
Because you're kind of just trying to settle it at that point.
Yeah.
Huh, that's interesting. Well, like, you know, Mike Tyson said, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face.
Yeah.
Same thing. Everybody's got a plan going into the burnout pit until
you're driving a 2 meter high Hilux. Yeah.
Yeah, because that was the first thing I noticed about that. I was like, man, that thing's really freaking tall.
It's 2 meters. Yeah.
2 meters, whatever that is in...
I don't know what that is. I think that's 7 or 8 foot. I don't know, somewhere in that region.
It's tall. And you don't have small wheels on it because that would look probably
I do.
silly.
I cop a lot of flack online for my rear tyres. But the thing is, I've set the car up to handle with those tyres as you're talking about pinion angles and anti-roll bar sort of deals, I've welded on there. Just get a welder and start welding stuff on.
Is it a 4-link car or is it like does it have a
leaf spring?
Leaf spring, yeah.
Yeah, it's full factory job.
Okay.
Yeah. It's
but still factory rear end too.
Yeah.
Still a Hilux rear end.
No, it's a 9-inch.
Okay, 9-inch.
So the only really factory part would be the leaf springs.
That makes sense.
But I've had to I've changed a few things because obviously I was doing damage to the tail shaft. It's 2-piece. And when I had my diff rolled down, the angle was too great. So my diff's like facing the sky just to get the right angle on the tail shaft, 2-piece.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot of drive off the car, which is a bonus for a burnout car, but it never goes, never really handles well because it's sort of just all the loads off the rear end.
Oh, so it's a 2-piece drive shaft in that thing. So the one probably goes out.
Yeah, it's like this. Yeah,
quite an angle. Yeah,
but you got to have your other. Obviously, the pinion angle has to match, so you're not snapping drive shafts. But I've put tramp rod bars underneath the back to stop the. It was actually rotating on idle. It was pulling the tail shaft out of there's a little rubber thing in the middle that holds the center bearing for the tail shaft or the drive shaft, whatever you guys call it. Yeah. And it kept pulling it out. So I was spending $300 on a rebuilding this thing every 2 events. So we engineered things and we've made a evolution to where it is now. But a lot of the things we do to this is to try and make it handle more like a car.
Can you not just lower it a bunch?
You can, of course you can, but I'm not doing that.
You won't lower it?
If I'm doing burnouts looking cool in a Hilux jacked off the. Yeah.
I mean, I don't hate that, but we obviously you've seen we have a lot of trucks that do burnouts. If you go to a burnout contest in Texas, it's all 2-door long bed work trucks for the most part, and they're low. They sit low, and it's easy to lower those trucks. They came pretty low factory too. They're not like. They're not very high trucks. No. But it's funny to see that you won't lower it.
I that would take away from my whole sort of thing I'm trying to achieve here. I like it, and I've actually lifted it more. So, but I'm used to it now. It works. If I do everything right, I can win. It comes down to me, and I'm used to it. And I feel like if I lowered it, I wouldn't like it. I don't know. So
yeah. What was the consensus of most people when you said you were coming to America to do burnouts, or your community of burnout guys? Were they like, that stupid American burnout contest suck, or were they like, maybe you can show them and
a lot of
bring
people,
the Lord of bring the name?
I'm a bit conflicted with a lot of the opinions about people. A lot of people say, go to America and show them Americans what's up, and I don't like that attitude. I'm coming to your country. I'm just here to have a good time. So a lot of people online, they're saying, the Americans got no idea and this and that. It's like, I nearly want to delete their comment and say, man, we're coming here to do burnouts together and have a good time. I'm not trying to, obviously you've seen the call out video. That's a bit of fun.
Of course, building hype for an event. It's nothing.
Cletus didn't actually splash me in his jet boat. That was that was all that it did. The real thing about the video, I actually did fall off the car. I went to put my hand down, I'm like, I'm getting splashed, and I missed it, and I just fell off the car. But it's a big thing for me. The Australians are you're a dreamer. And my whole life I have a plan, and I've actually wanted to do this for 3 years. I was never in a financial position because this cost a hell of a lot of money. Yeah. But I felt like I want to do this because I'm getting deep now, but if I'm going to die or leave this life, I don't want to not take an opportunity to do something I've always wanted to do. Yeah. So in the end, I thought, you know what? I'm just going to do it, and I'm going to have a good time and see what happens.
I mean, right now is the opportunity, like you're saying, like when we all leave, I like to hope we don't all leave with regrets.
Yeah. I live my life like that.
Yeah, it'd be stupid to sit there and think, oh man, I'm glad I saved that money and not brought my car to America and traveled around the country with my friends. Yeah. Glad I didn't do that.
Yeah, and I feel like I've got a lot to offer here in America. As far as the burnout as a sport, as I said, I'm passionate about what I do. And if I can pass on some information to some guys here and have a good time doing it, I feel like I'm doing the right thing for the sport. And if I can grow this sport in this country, it's only going to benefit us at home. Yeah. The crossover, one day I think there's going to be an American versus an Australian burnout competition, and guys like Garrett and Western, like there's a whole bunch of guys that are sort of getting into burnouts. But
I think people will pop up that nobody expected as well is part of it, because you're going to bring new blood into the sport, and people that drag race or drift that have all this parts and knowledge may decide to step into the different ring.
You would be extremely surprised with the amount of messages I've gotten in the last week from really famous people saying, dude, I want to do this. How do I get it done? I can tell you one, like, so Jeff Lutz, I took him for a ride at SEMA. Drag race guy, through and through. He's like, man, this thing is badass. I want one. So there's an opportunity to get someone like Jeff into the sport that will only boost the burnout profile here in America. So I think we're in a good position to really take this to the next level. And guys like Cletus, they've already been trying to do this for a number of years, and I feel like we're all just going to help each other make it something, impressive, and we can compete at the highest level in America and Australia.
Yeah. Well, there's already a good infrastructure with what Garrett's done, and having his own facility, obviously that helps a lot. But what was like there was people that were commenting that were like, oh, Americans don't know how to do it. But those people probably don't have burnout cars in Australia, so
at all.
They don't matter, but like...
No. Or a car at all, in general.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's normally how it goes.
Yeah.
You don't know what you're doing. You don't know how to drive. The best drivers are always standing on the fence or in the bleachers. That's how it always is. The best cars are always in the shop.
Yeah.
And the best drivers are in the bleachers.
Yeah.
But what was like the community thoughts? Because you probably talked to a ton of people before you decided to send it over. Were they like, go do it? Or were they like... oh, you're going to miss out on all the burnouts here,
Yeah, it was 50-50. I didn't tell a lot of people. For myself, I just make something up in my head, and this happened pretty quickly. I had a bit of a deal going on. I was always going to come to SEMA to do something cool, because that's what I want to do. And originally I wasn't bringing my car. I was going to leave it at home, and I was going to build a car here in America. And in the end, this guy, he rang me up and he goes, listen, this is what you need to do. And he helped me out a lot, which is Gut from Power Cruise. He goes, if you want to do this seriously, he's got an event here in America as well. It's somewhere like 2-3 days drive from here.
Yeah, I think it's like Michigan or something.
Yeah. And which is a really fantastic event in Australia. It's a track-driven thing. But he goes, if you want to do that, I'm happy to help you out. But he goes, in return, you got to bring your car to my event for the next 2 years.
Okay.
I said, oh, yeah. But the money, he helped me out tremendously. And in the end, I was like, you know what? I'm doing it. And I didn't really tell a lot of people, because it was just like, I told a few people and they look at me like I'm crazy, or like, just they didn't comprehend what I was trying to do. What do you mean you're putting your car on an airplane? What do you mean you're going to America? When's it coming home? Where are you going to leave it? What's this? What's that? I couldn't tell them those answers. Yeah. So I just sort of kept it pretty quiet and just did it. But the few people I did tell, they're like, what are you going to, someone answers soon, what are you going to do? You've got this golden ticket, you can go and win the Masters if you try hard enough and all the rest of it. But I felt like that was the sad part, was having to leave that behind, because I'm not going to get another car built, and even if I did, I won't get a ticket, because there's a rule, if you change chassis, you're done.
Oh, because that car has to be specifically the one that doesn't. All right.
So I lost that. That was the sad part about leaving Australia. But I will, don't get me wrong, I'll build another car, and the next car I build is in the plans now, and it's going to be the wildest burnout car on the planet. I know it. It has to be. It's in my head. I don't know if it'll work, with the technology we have right now. I think it'll work, but I'm going to blow some stuff up trying to make it work. But that's a whole nother deal. But having Luxifer here in America is, as I said, it's not everyone agreed, but a lot of people support. So now it's here. Guys that really didn't care what I did, but they're sending me messages saying, man, good on you for living the dream and trying, whatever. So that's nice to get some support as well.
I think I'm pumped that you did that, and it's sad because there was a time where that exact thing that you're talking about was almost a reality. A bunch of Australians here, and then everybody got sick all at the same time in the whole world. Yeah, and that kind of put the whole end on that. Yeah, I was told that everyone was sick. So because Killa Bee was here, Warbird was here, and they were planning to come over and use the cars and travel around and all that stuff. It was going to be the first push, and I think that would have been a start of it all. And it sucks that it was pushed back I mean, 4 or 5 years almost.
Yeah.
At this point. Thankfully, Killaby still got to stay here. I don't know what Steve's doing now. I don't know if he built a new car or what.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. It's I don't really know the bloke personally. He was before my time.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even really know the guys with Warbird because they're from
Castleman Rod Shop.
Castleman. Yeah, I know of them.
Yeah.
And they commented on my thing the other day and said, "Well done, man. Have a great time." I was like, sort of feel like, oh, this was you guys, a couple of years ago.
I know, it's sad. Like they were here, like they did like 98% of that, and then right when it was all they were about to come and use them, it all broke down. It was such a bummer.
I was sitting in my lounge room the week before I left, and there come up something on the news about strain 97 and it's going to shut down the world. I'm thinking, knowing my luck, this is what happens to me. Mm-hmm. But because I put my car on a plane, instead of 3 months of what ifs, I was on the plane with the car. Shout out to Cathay Pacific Cathay Cargo. Those guys did me a solid. They put my car on a plane and they said, "You want to go on the plane?" I said, "What do you mean go on the plane? Am I sitting on a box with a cargo net, like a ratchet strap around
in the car?"
Yeah, in the car. And they go, no, there's seats in that. You'll be fine. They put me on the plane. I traveled to America with my car on 3 different planes.
Okay. So it had to move. 2 different planes. It had to move planes too?
Yeah, in Singapore. Yeah, Hong Kong. It changed planes.
Wow.
I was in Hong Kong for a day. I had to wait for them to change planes. Mm-hmm. But it was one of the most crazy experiences of my life. On a cargo plane, there's no doors on the cockpit. So I'm sitting behind the pilot when he's flying this 747 jumbo jet. It is like a big plane.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there. I got to experience the whole deal. And you can't, and the guys literally said, the guys at Cathay said, money can't buy this experience. I said, well, it did. It cost me, I'll tell you, 70,000 Australian dollars to fly the car one way.
Oh, man, that's an expensive trip.
Yeah, 70 grand gone down the drain.
You could have built one here for that.
No.
You would have been close.
No. Not to the standard I'd want, and not to. Don't get me wrong.
Well, because what is that US then? Is it like
that's
50?
About 45.
45. Yeah, you couldn't have built one for 45 in the US.
No. Oh, if you had sponsors and stuff.
70 in the US, I think you could build a pretty good Burnout.
70 would probably get you. Yep.
Yeah, but 50, 45 US probably wouldn't.
But the big thing for me in my head, and a lot of people said, just go build another one. It's like, yep. I don't have a workshop.
Yeah.
Don't have any tools. Don't have anyone that knows what they're doing. I don't even know where to get parts. Yeah. I got none of that. And I'm thinking, you know what? This is not going to work. And the other side of the story is my car is so reliable, touch wood, because I don't really want to say that's definitely
It's all wood. You're good.
It's all wood. It's so reliable. So I went to Hoonigan. I beat the hell out of that car for 5 days straight. Mm-hmm. I've gone to Westerns. I beat the hell out of it there. I'm pretty much confident I can go and beat the hell out of it anywhere. And most things are good. You build a new car and there's all these question marks about every component on the car.
Yep.
So take something I know is good and reliable and I can put on a show, go over there and maybe build something in someone else's shed and shop and try and find the right parts. A lot of parts on this car are Australian manufactured and made. You can't get them here because they work for Burnout cars and don't necessarily have that here. So it was easier just to bring my car.
Just a bunch of Chinese Aeroflow stuff, right?
Yeah. Aeroflow. I don't use a lot of Aeroflow. Well, I do have some Aeroflow parts.
I'm not trying to talk too badly about them. I just see what I see people post about them.
Well, here's the thing with Australia.
Mostly Troy.
A lot of parts in Australia are made in China because we have an agreement with China. Like America, most things are made in America.
Yeah.
But I will say the fittings I found in America aren't real. They're just, I can't get used to them.
Well, there's a lot of different brand fuel fittings too. We have a pretty wide variety.
I'm sure there is good ones.
Some really suck. Some
are
really good. But it's funny that fittings were your go-to.
Yeah, well, that's all I've really dealt with. I did some work on Weston's car with fittings because he had some things that weren't big enough. And I said, man, see how it sucks in like that? I said, that's no good. You might be a -10, but that's like -6 through the middle.
Man, so I guess, your only real option was put it on a plane and send it here. Now, it was on like a platform from what I saw, so they were able to wheel it in and out?
Yeah, so basically it goes on a big skid, and I'll give you some footage if you want to roll it. goes on a big skid and then forklift onto like this scissor lift. I don't know if you call them scissor lifts in this country, but basically goes on a platform and it scissors up. The thing would be 2 stories high, the plane door. Like it's a big plane. Goes up, and then in the freight plane, they got these wheels. So it pushes in, it turns itself around in the plane. They put it what lane they want it. Like it's a full-on operation. Crazy to experience in first person.
Isn't it crazy to think like militaries are just doing that constantly, and it costs $70,000, and they're just like moving stuff around all the time.
Yeah,
accidentally moving things around.
It's I talked to the guys that helped me out the whole ordeal now. TJI Cargo made my life really easy. And he goes, I moved a helicopter yesterday. That was like $300,000. Mm-hmm. And I was like, yeah, right. And he goes, so yeah, your car's pretty cheap at 70. I'm thinking, Jesus, like.
Yeah. They don't even blink twice on that kind of stuff.
No, at all.
Man, that's crazy. Yeah, that's big level stuff. So your car, Turbo 400, LS, how much power do you think you're making when you're wide open throttle? Because you're not really wide open throttle like we were talking.
No. So as the current setup on the dyno run made 1327 at the wheels. Mm-hmm. It's just over 1500 at the engine, I'd say. But it's on holiday mode. So in my head, and when I spoke to Troy about building this engine, he goes, what do you want? What power do you want? I said, I don't care about power. Power means nothing to me after 1,000 horsepower. So if you're building a burnout car with 1,000 horsepower, that's all you need to go out and win some nats. You can probably win some nats with less horsepower.
I mean, hasn't it been won NA with cars?
Yeah, NASCAR engines and stuff. Yeah,
yeah,
100%.
like an SB2.
You'd be struggling. You'd be struggling to win some nats with an NA LS.
Yeah,
but basically 1,000 horsepower. See, why I say 1,000 horsepower is because the gearing we run for burnouts, you need the power to spin that efficiently and quickly. Mm-hmm. So I start in top gear in my car, pull up to the line, I'm in top gear of the gearbox. When the light goes green, I stand on it. It goes from 0 to 300 k's an hour in under a second.
What's the rear gear ratio in it?
3.0.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm. Wow. I was for some reason I was expecting it to be like a 4 something.
Wouldn't spin fast enough.
Yeah.
I don't know the exact wheel speed. I'm not a scientist, but I think there's probably a way to work it out, and no doubt someone probably will and message me this, but I think it's around about 330 k's an hour. Mm-hmm. So from 0 to 330 k's an hour in under a second, you need at least 1,000 horsepower to do that. Mm-hmm. And that's your score. That's some of your score, instant smoke.
And you need a converter that has like no slip in it.
It locks up at about 6,000 RPM.
Yeah, you want it to be fully tight.
You want it tight. Yep.
So driving it around is probably why they chop so much like that too.
Yeah, it's a lot of fuel. Yeah, it's a part of the factor. But I like it. It's cool. You know what I mean? It's cool. It actually helps. You get in a bit of a as you go along. So definitely different.
Yeah, it makes it cool. There is definitely a science to that, and we do that same thing in drag racing. The first gear ratio, second gear, because you can go as expensive as you want on a Turbo 400.
Definitely.
You can pick every single gear ratio you want. Mm-hmm. Probably wouldn't mean that much to you
at all.
No. It doesn't matter, but for us, it's having a close ratio is really important.
Yep.
And getting it as tight as possible, so there's no RPM drop on the shifts.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're starting in high gear and you just leave it in high gear, it doesn't matter.
That's all that matters. So the reason a lot of people use power glides because they're cheaper and they're less parts, less things to go wrong. But when I do demonstrations, so I go to, say in Australia, Power Cruise, they have like a racetrack, Sydney Dragway. So across the roads, the racetrack version of Sydney Dragway, I can't remember its name off the top of my head, but there'll be a massive long racetrack with grandstands and fans and that hanging over all the fences. And basically my job is to go out there and do a burnout.
Yeah.
But a freestyle burnout, which is something quite cool to do. But if I use top gear, my tyres, because the racetrack's very abrasive, they use something called like an open grade asphalt, which lets water draw through so you don't aquaplane off the racetrack. Mm-hmm. Really rough.
Yeah.
So instead of lasting 1 minute and 10 seconds on a burnout pad, my tyres were lasting 20 seconds. 20 seconds ain't long enough to impress anyone. You know, they might think, oh, that's cool, and then before you know it's over. So what I do with the Turbo 400, it gives me the ability to pull it back to second gear. Slows the wheel speed down 100 Ks. Instead of lasting 20 seconds on tyres, I last 30 seconds on tyres. That 10 seconds is a massive difference when it comes to putting on a show for a crowd.
Yep. And with Power Glide, you can drop it down to first gear, but it's not going to be as happy.
It's not happy at all.
Yeah.
Or it's not as tall. It's not tall enough.
Yep.
Yep.
And it's really hard, that kind of power on a Power Glide at that level. And trying to shift back to first at wide open throttle is pretty hard on stuff.
There's a rule we have in Burnouts: never shift down on full open throttle. Shift up all you want, but yeah, you wouldn't. You'd definitely send some clutch packs into the crowd if you did that too often. That's for sure.
Yeah. Well, do you have like regulations on what kind of case you have to use, or because in drag racing we have to use SFI cases that are steel woven in there, so you're not going to send your converter or clutch packs out of this world.
Believe it or not, Australia is extremely over the top when it comes to safety. I think Burnouts gets a grey area over its whole sport because you don't have to have really anything. You have a tail shaft loop and it's like, yeah, cool. But I had a turbo 400 gearbox that come apart. The converter stripped the bolts out of it and it literally sent bolts through my floor at the speed of light.
Out so through the converter bolts?
Through the converter bolts snapped, and the big comp in Sydney, in the final, I remember, it was everything was going great, and it just stopped moving forward. Engine was running, but basically the converter bolt snapped, and it sent one through the floor, through the case of the gearbox, into the floor, through the floor, and out the side of the car. I've got hydraulic hose in my car as cooling hose, because my radiator's on the tray. It pierced hydraulic hose, steel woven hydraulic hose, these bolts. Went straight, and it wasn't fixed.
Yeah.
So you know when something's not fixed and it's real hard to pierce it because it's got movement and play? Yeah. This thing moves this much and it still went through the hydraulic hose.
That thing had some speed to it.
So if that hit me, I was done.
Yeah.
You'd be really hurt. So that's the day I took my gearbox home, cut the bell housing up and put an SFI rated bell housing on top of it and more sheet metal around the gearbox area.
Yeah, once you put a bell housing on a Turbo 400, they're pretty safe. The center areas are hard to break. It takes a lot of power. On Power Glides, a stock one is pretty useless because they break almost any horsepower numbers. It doesn't really do much. So you having an LS is interesting too because big blocks are obviously the move, but it's a money thing. I would imagine it's a little bit of a money thing because they're pretty pricey.
It's you got to pick your battles with this one. So I like LS because my engine builder likes LS. And I've got along with Troy from the start. And I had an LS, which is why I got in contact with Troy. But now, of course, you can go out and spend $100,000 on a big block and it sounds like thunder and you go out there and kill it. You will definitely be rebuilding that thing 3 or 4 times a year. If you're on my schedule in Australia, extremely busy. So I'll do 100 burnouts a year.
Wow.
There's no way in the world you can do that on a big block or a small block running that kind of horsepower.
Yeah.
Doesn't happen. And if you do try, you're going to rot it and you're going to be back at step one. So I've formulated, because I do a lot of different stuff with the car, we've got this formula that's just good enough, but not the best, if you know what I mean. It's sort of up there. So you got to try and pick what you want. If I built a purpose-only burnout car, it would 100% be unreliable as hell. It would make all the power, all the noise, all the boost for a short amount of time.
Yeah.
But hey, do you have the budget to do that? Your budget goes from $50,000 a year to 100, probably maybe 200 grand a year if you want to do as many burnouts as what I do.
Yeah, that kind of ruins the fun a lot. It takes
does.
the fun away.
Yeah,
that's what it really does. Like 100%. Even if you can afford it, the fun just kind of depletes a little bit. What size engine is it?
Mine?
Yeah.
427.
Oh, okay. So it's a lot of cubic inch. I didn't expect it to be that much because in the U.S., a lot of the boosted LSs are like 388s.
388s, yeah.
Yeah, I try to go small for higher RPM to get it out of peak torque a little bit.
Yeah, yeah.
That's the kind of stuff you have to think about. I'm sure you guys think about peak torque.
Yeah, as I said.
They don't like peak torque very much, but you have a blower, so.
Yeah. So and I run a 1471.
Yeah.
So when I bought this blower, I thought, right.
That's the big dog.
Buy the big dog. High Helix 1471. Bought it. I couldn't buy it new because whatever reason, we're in Australia and it's hard to buy new blowers in Australia. And I messaged this guy and I said, hey, had a blower for sale. Hey, would this be good for burnouts? He replied, he goes, yeah, man, no worries at all. Burnouts be cool. I was like, whatever, he's just telling me that. But I said, and when I met the guy, I said, he goes, I got a big block. This thing makes 32 pound on my big block. I'm thinking, okay, well, I got an LS and this thing's going to make 40 pound on my LS. So I actually underdrive my blower 15%, makes 18 pound, 15% underdriven.
Wow.
So it's a good blower. And diving into the whole thing, if you overdrive a blower, it sounds cool. But on my engine combo, if I overdrive that blower, I'm making 2,000 horsepower. I don't want that because that takes my engine life down drastically. So I've set it up safe. I've got it on the fine line between killer and getting killed, if you know what I mean. So.
And it's on methanol, right?
Methanol, yep.
Yeah.
EFI.
Methanol, EFI. I know the EFI is probably going to get everybody all fired up and sensitive. I know that was one of the big problems with Garrett's car for a while was trying to figure out how all that stuff has to cooperate and how to run it, and engine management is tough part. And EFI is nice because you don't need a magneto that's gigantic and top fuel level stuff.
And this is what I can get back to about the knowledge is once your car's set up on EFI, I hit the button and drive.
Yeah.
I check my data, sure. I check the EGTs. Oh, yeah, they're close together. It didn't get too hot, wasn't too cold. Oil pressure was good. That's the end of it. I ain't changing pills. I ain't changing, timing. It does everything for you. So that's the bonus about EFI. And a funny story about Troy, when I rang Troy to build this engine I've got now, he goes, oh, yeah, you got a barrel valve? I said, no, EFI. And he goes, what? I said, EFI. And he goes, it'll never work. People have tried. It doesn't sound the same. It's not cool. Everything under the sun. And I said, well, man, this is what I'm doing. You're either going to build the engine or you're not. He built the engine. We got it to work. He rings me now, and we joke about it all the time. He goes, man, this guy rang me today. He wanted mechanical. I laughed at him, and I said, no, we do EFI. And the guy would say, oh, no, I don't want EFI, I want mechanical. And he goes, don't you want to be like Luxifer? And they're like, Luxifer's not EFI, it's mechanical. He goes, no, it's EFI. And he reckons nearly single-handedly we've sort of changed the whole perspective of burnout engines in Australia from my car.
Yeah, just from being able to show that it works, and then he can to his customers because he's the right guy to be the mouthpiece at that point.
Yeah. He gets a lot of calls about my engine and people wanting a copy of my engine, and they're really... Not many people know it's EFI because they look at it, but you don't see.
Yeah.
I've got mechanical lines on top. There's a company called Joe Blow that makes a box where your injectors pump fuel into the box and then it distributes the fuel as a mechanical unit. It's called an EFI mechanical blend. So it looks mechanical.
Okay.
But it's absolutely not.
So that's probably the magic sauce in there too, is that
Australian-made
system
product,
right there, not off-the-shelf injectors that are just pulsing. You're using an EFI box. Yeah. That's pretty cool. I want to look at that.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. And that's
because I'll be out this weekend. I'm gonna look at all that stuff.
Yeah. It's definitely half the secret. And the formula we've got to work, it works. 16 injectors. So 6 in the hat, 6 in the rails. We pump 80% of our fuel into the rails and 20% fuel through the hat, which actually we can trim off the EGTs during your burnout. Another big thing is I use a link ECU. So a link ECU has something called a biometric sensor. So a biometric sensor, I might be totally wrong here. This is what I think it does. It registers the sea level and all that kind of jazz. What you do on a mechanical car, you need to know what sea level and stuff.
Get your screwdriver out.
Yeah, your carby tuner's on and off you go. Yeah. It's basically does it all for you. So I've turned a lot of that stuff off because I don't want a little failure to lean out my car or something.
Yeah, so it has like a closed loop system where it can self-correct as needed.
And my tuner hates it. So I say to him, because I check the EGTs, and if they're a bit warm, say we go somewhere a bit warm, he goes, oh, give me access to your laptop. Another good thing about EFI, I'll send him some data and he'll look at it and goes, oh, I want to put some more fuel in your car. Give me some, connect me to your laptop. And I'll see my laptop moving on the screen. He's changing settings and fuel tables and all sorts of stuff. And then the other day he goes, oh, your EGTs were cooler and the second one right up. And I said, I just turned the fuel pressure up. And he was like, no. I said, yeah, I just put another 3 pound in the fuel pressure. It works mint. It's fine. Look at it. It's fine.
Yeah.
So little things like that. You get to know it and you get to get away with stuff. But
it's funny because this feels like a conversation that should have been happening in like 1986.
Yeah, when fuel injection first come out.
Like, you know what I mean? Not something that should be happening now. Like, everybody fast uses EFI, perfectly healthy. It was always, to me, it was always surprising that the Burnout guys were so opposed to it because, like, people make high horsepower without it. And I get the rev limiter stuff can be different. I know Link ECU has a different rev limiter.
Terrible rev limiter. Yeah, that's why you'll never hear me here. You'll never hear me hit limiter because I hate the sound of a Link ECU.
You shouldn't hit it on the limiter anyways, right?
Nah, points off.
Yeah. So that's funny too because most people sit there.
To a point, I'd get a 2-step MSD box or something, and I'd put that as my limiter to not hear the Link ECU limiter because it's terrible.
So you would just have like a little bit lower on your MSD box. That's funny.
100 RPM lower than my actual limiter or whatever.
Because my buddies that build rotaries say that the Link ECU does way better on the limiter sounds and the 2-step and stuff.
Maybe for a rotary they do.
For a rotary, that's what they say. But then for a V8, an LS, but LSs don't sound good on the limiter to begin with.
No.
So there's that problem as well.
Yeah. So it's definitely, so I used to like limiter sounds. I thought it was great and everyone does this. Yeah, limiter. But now I absolutely cringe. I go, I just know what it's doing to the engine and I know it is an actual sign of driver skill that you can't control your RPM. And it's hard, like, I'll show you my data in a skid or a burnout. I go out and I'll start at, say, 80% throttle position. And then by the end of the skid, I'm driving around at 8,000 RPM with 40% throttle position. But the note will be the same the whole skid. So basically, in my head, without even thinking about it, I'm actually backing off the throttle for the whole burnout because as your tyres get slippery, you need less, obviously, throttle to spin them at the same RPM.
Yeah, so you're trying to keep it at the same tire speed the whole time.
You want to start with 8,000 RPM and you want to do the whole burnout with 8,000 RPM. And I will limit a bash a tiny bit when the tyres are off, just a sort of a pedal push, a little bit here and there. But that's it, man. That's all the limiter you want to use.
Wow, that's interesting. I've never really thought about that, but I felt it in a burnout. Where as the burnout's really going, you start to hit the limiter more and more.
Tires are slippery.
And you're starting to, But sometimes I've been in burnout pits that are a little oily or greasy or something like that. You know, somebody blew a coolant line and now you drove through it.
See, and that's the part of it, right? So normally for burnouts, I'll sit there and watch as many as I can. And this has caught me out more times than not lately. Someone will dump a whole lot of oil. I didn't see it. And I'll go in that oil and nearly end up in the fence and have to reverse, or I'll have to, like my last comp before I left Australia, I hit someone's oil and it hit one tyre, spun the whole car around, faced me towards the wall and like out of the blue.
Yeah.
And I had to pedal my ass off to get out of that position I was in. Probably cost me the win. So I ended up getting third, but I shouldn't have. I don't know. But it's a really, really hard one. You can sort of, as I said, these kind of things people don't think about, but it all makes a massive difference in the end when you're doing it at the top level.
Yeah, all those little things, and you only get 60 seconds to make your run. You got to make that count. You don't get a second try. There's nothing like that. And
in Australia, where the competition's so high, so there's like, say you'd call my car a pro burnout car, the level of engineering in the car I'm talking about, not even the drivers. So the level of car where you can get in it and just win some hats or whatever, right? That level of competition. There's not 3 there. There's 30 there. So one small mistake, and guess what? You're not even making top 10. Put your shit in the trailer. I don't know if you can say that here.
No, that's fine. Yeah, put it on the trailer.
Yeah, put it on the trailer and you're going home. So that one small mistake. So the competition level is extremely high.
It would be cool if they did to give you more burnouts, almost like a ladder, where start with 32, 16, just to give the good ones more burnouts would almost be pretty cool, because just one is tough. Like
it is, but personally I like one.
I believe that, but it's definitely it's tough because you can make a little mistake, but you can still kind of pull through if you made a mistake in one. But you know, by the second one you got a little better, and like you just have to be a little better than that.
But see, the thing is, with the way I look at it, is I'm going out there to 100%, and it doesn't matter where I do it on the first run or the fourth run. If something's going to go wrong, normally it'll happen at the final. Yeah. For whatever, that seems to be my problem. So if I could go there and slay it and not make a single mistake, go through the first round, second round, third round, get to the top 10 and hit an oil patch. Or because I've skidded my car 4 times in the last 4 hours, I blow an engine.
Yeah.
So event promoters are the opposite. Event promoters want to see the biggest, baddest cars there, do as many burnouts as they can to keep the crowd happy. As a competitor, you're like, I'd just rather do my burnout, get done with it, you know, put it on the trailer and have a beer and talk to my mates about car stuff.
100%. Well, because with drag racing, it's interesting because not always the fastest guy wins for that reason, because you have to go through every round.
Yeah.
And sometimes, like, I'll pull up for the next round.
Yeah.
And the guy's broken.
Yeah.
Or he makes a mistake that time, but didn't the earlier time. So, like, it almost gives everybody more of an equal chance in a little bit of a way.
Yeah.
But it's really hard on the cars.
Exactly.
But that's where it gets kind of interesting as well, because you have to be like, you have to have a tough car. You can't just... Some of these burnout guys, they can do one burnout and that thing is done.
Yeah.
It's like the car is done.
Yeah, for hours. Or like, rods. Yeah.
Never run again.
Yeah, see, my car's set up where I probably could do that well. It's just the cost too. So the cost of a burnout, I've worked out with engine maintenance and stuff, it's about $1,000 a burnout. People are like, what do you mean? Tires are only $400. It's like, yeah, methanol, oil, wear and tear. If you do, say you do 50 burnouts and you rebuild an engine and it costs you 20 grand, you got to factor that 20 grand across all those 50 burnouts.
Trans fluid
Getting
every
to
now
the
and
track,
then.
trans fluid, trans maintenance, diff maintenance. My car, painting it all the time because I smashed the guards with tire slap and all that stuff. All that equivalates to, about $1,000 a burnout.
That's not, it's not horrible. It makes sense. I understand. Like I try not to think about my car on those numbers, but it's probably not far off from that when you think about engine.
Yeah. So I go to a local comp and they're like, let's say it's $5,000 to win it. I was like, and you get there and you think it's going to be like a one qualifying burnout and a final. He's like, no, we're doing 3 qualifiers all through the day. I'm like, see you later. I'm going.
Yeah.
It's like,
you can't just do the one qualifier.
Yeah, it's like, no, but we want to pump the crowd up. I said, you want to pump the crowd up? I said, man, like that's a lot of wear and tear. I didn't even bring that many tires, and you know what I mean. It's like I'll do it obviously, but it's just I'd rather just get it. I don't even know. I haven't looked into Cletus's event. Is it just one burnout?
Yeah, it's just the one.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I'm liking this guy more and more. I don't even know him.
You just show up and you do the one and you hope it doesn't suck.
And that's, as I said, for an amateur or someone that's making their way into the sport, they want more seat time.
Yeah.
I've done, and I'm not saying I'm the best at anything or whatever, but I've done enough burnouts where I sort of know what it's going to do, and I would just like to set up, heat up my car. My car's high maintenance. I don't want to drag the maintenance period on all day. Heat up my car, plug it in, get the oil hot, fuel it up, go do a burnout for that class, and I'm done.
Yeah, I think it's a really just a seat time thing. Like you said, you've done 200 burnouts.
Oh, probably way more.
Yeah. So like competitive level, not just everybody's like, oh, I've done burnouts, like actual competitive level tip-ins and the whole nine.
Or if it's not that, the demonstration stuff as well.
Exactly. So
that tally.
There's almost nobody that you're going to come across at these burnout contests that can say they've done that many, or even 50.
Yeah, right.
I'd be surprised to hear somebody say they did like 50 competitive level burnouts because it's hard to get the seat time and it costs $1,000 no matter if you do it in your backyard or if you do it on a big stage. So it's really just like a seat time is unduplicatable. You have such a leg up on everyone by just seat time. And even if I did every Cletus in cars, it's like...
Yeah, and because you're doing one burnout a night. Or see if you do 2 classes, you're doing 2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you really can't get that many in. And 2 classes is hard on your car because they turn you around quick. Like at least like at a Summer Knots, you can do... There's multiple days.
There is. And there's things like Skid Row and stuff like that.
Love that place.
But where I get most of my seat time is Power Cruise. I've done 10 burnouts in a day. Like, and I'm not talking like a burnout, like a comp burnout. I'll do a dream team run, and which is basically a burnout, but you learn more about how your car handles at higher speeds. And then I'll bolt tires on, and I'll go and do a hit on the pad, and then I'll do a burnout comp at night, and then I'll drive around the track and do power skids, and all that stuff is equivalating to seat time. So it's easy to get your numbers up there.
That helps a lot. It's hard. I mean, some of like the drift guys, like if you're drift, like a pro drift driver or even like a good drifter, you can get a lot of seat time pretty easily. Like there's a lot of that. I know you guys have a pretty good drift scene down in Australia. Another thing I was thinking, which is kind of funny here, you know, V8 guys mostly drag race, and like the JDM guys usually do like
Makes sense. Yep.
like they drift and stuff.
Yeah.
But down there, I feel like the JDM guys drag race a lot.
They do, yeah. There's a
Which
big
is
scene
like
for
almost
that, yeah.
opposite. Like the GTRs is huge to drag race in Australia, and like it's not JDM, but the Barras are huge on the drag strip, and then the V8 guys do burnouts, which is like a funny almost flop of.
Oh, so Australia's very versatile. There's pretty much a mixed bag of everything. You know, there's guys that drag race their V8 and drift their V8, and a lot of drift guys now are using, you know, different sort of style engines. LSs are getting extremely popular in drifting, whereas 5 years ago everyone's like, LS, go to the burnout pad, mate. You're at the wrong spot. You know, so. And even Barras, you know, Barras are in Australia. Barras are an extremely common combination because they make cheap horsepower.
Yeah, if people don't know, it's the inline 6-cylinder 4-liter Ford engine that was found in basically everything.
In a taxi, most commonly.
In a taxi.
Yep.
There's a couple guys that race that come over here with one in a Fox body.
Okay, yep.
And they run a couple of our Dragon Drives events.
Yep.
Benny's Customs, he comes over here and does that.
Okay.
And he's got like a Cressida and stuff, but 4-liter.
Yep. And I personally don't like them because I don't like the sound of them, and I'm not a real fan of a 6-cylinder. But people make them work. Like, they're not really a burnout engine. There's probably 2 or 3 in Australia that are actually blowing, like, with a blower on them. And they go all right. They're not real reliable because they haven't got the R&D on them to make that engine work like an LS or a big block. But for a normal drag car or a power cruise car, man, they make they're cheap horsepower.
Yeah, from what I've seen, they like stout engine, stock bottom end stuff make good power for just drag racing.
Yep. You buy one, it's called a green top motor. It's got like LPG rods in it, or something to do with LPG, which is like propane gas. And then, man, you can bolt a turbo straight on the side and make 700 horsepower as an unopened engine.
That's funny. So the taxis probably ran propane.
LPG? Yeah, they did. Yeah. Huh. So the taxi engines were like common as, like, if you had a taxi engine, these things are doing like 800,000 Ks in a taxi, and people were putting like, we have a joke, it's ready for boost. If it's got lots of miles on it or Ks, it's like, it's ready for boost. So
yeah, the rings are opened up a little bit.
Yeah, exactly.
Ready to go. We have that with LSs, because here we got LSs and LQs and stuff like that, iron blocks and aluminum blocks in everything.
Yeah.
So many of our cars had LSs, but you guys didn't really have that. So pretty much everything over there is imported as far as LS goes.
Well, LSs were found in Holden Commodores.
But aluminum block stuff, right?
Yeah, they were. So the LQ 6s and 9s, whatever they were, so LY 6 maybe, they were imported.
Yeah. Which is the ones that you really want.
If you like, I like dart blocks, but if I was going to build a cheaper version of a burnout motor, I'd definitely use an LY6, I think they are. And that said, you can't buy them. They're not a car. They're not a truck. You can't buy the trucks they come in. So yeah, definitely imported. Yeah.
That's funny because here, everybody, like, you can go to a junkyard here, and I can point out 10 5.3 LS engines that you could probably make 800 horsepower on without having to do anything besides just put your turbo on it.
Which is cool. And it's unfortunately we didn't have that in Australia, but it sort of pushed us towards making the alloy blocks work. And there's still a lot of guys that run the alloy 6-liter or the 5.7 LS1 that come out in the Commodores. And man, they're bolting 800 horsepower on a pretty fairly unopened engine, springs, cam, nothing serious. And hey, they're working. They're working for a season at least.
Yeah, they're good. They're good motors for sure. And if that's what you have to work with, then I get it. It's interesting you say dart over like an LSX block. Because
LSX really isn't a thing in Australia.
You don't even get those, but
you can get them. It's just
not as common.
Most engine builders just go straight for a dart block. Yeah.
Huh. That's interesting. Well, man, I know you're tired and want to get out of here, so I'll let you. I'll let you go. But how can we plug you? I know you got a YouTube channel. How can people find you to watch your?
So I started a YouTube channel about a week ago.
Perfect.
I just thought, I might as well give it a crack. Everyone's like, "What's YouTube?" I was like, "What's YouTube?" No, I'm trying. I said I don't have one, and I made some stuff ages ago. So started YouTube a week ago. I think we're at 2,500 subs. I got partnered in a week, which I don't know if that's good.
I mean, it's nice for you because
I know, but,
it's better than getting a lot of views and not being partnered.
Yeah. So Luxifer Kyle will be my tag on most things, Instagram, TikTok, all the stuff.
Yep.
And yeah, basically, once I go home, I'm just going to build stuff and drive it.
Yeah, I'll put all your stuff in the description. And anything else you need to tell us before we get out of here?
Basically, thanks for having me, and hopefully I can put on a good show here for you guys in Florida, and it clears some cars, and my engine holds together. And as I said, I'm going to be here for 2 years, and hopefully I can do my best to see you as much as possible.
Good freaking deal, man. I'm excited for it. We'll have you back on probably in the next 2 years, I'm sure.
All right, sounds good, man.
Good deal.